Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I'm Mr. Robinson, as many of you know. And I want to ask you a question. Who do you think you are? Really, who do you think you are? Now, that's a good question. As a question that we not only have other people pose to us, but we ask ourselves, and we ask ourselves that all of the time, even if we don't hear those words come in our minds. We're trying to figure out who we are. And a lot of that comes down to, if you really think about it, what do we want? Who do we want to be? And what do we want to be? Because those are all of the things that become part of what it is that we ask when we ask ourselves that question, who do we think we are? That's what we're really asking. Now, some of the things that I've asked myself in my life, who it is that I think that I am. And of course I look in the mirror and I say, I'm me. But I'm not just me. I'm many, many me's. And that's something that we all can sort of think about in terms of the fact that it's not just one thing we are, but it's many people, and it's not just many people in terms of who we are, but many people who have informed and formed us to be who we are. Now, this first photograph I want to show you is of my mother and father. Now, my mother was a strawberry blonde, very light-skinned German. She was a ballerina in the Berlin State Opera. My father, a black man from Lynchburg, Virginia, grew up in segregation. Now, when the two of them met and married, it was illegal. Did you know that? Did you know that in this country, there were laws on the books that made interracial marriage illegal? Until 1967 in my father's home state of Virginia. Which meant that my mother and father actually had to fight the U.S. Army High Command so that my father could get his GI benefits because they were breaking the law. Now, this is not too long ago. Now, my mother and father obviously were instrumental in forming me in terms of who it is that I am. Now, back in those days, they didn't make people like me. There was no such thing as biracial Obama black kids, you know what I mean? Now, this is my brother and myself. I think I was 3 and my brother was 6. And we integrated the Catholic school system in Jersey City where I grew up. Our family integrated the Catholic parish where I grew up. I was the first quote-unquote colored kid to play on a Little League farm baseball team when I was a kid. Now, you have to realize that people weren't throwing ticker tape parades for us for being the first. This was the time during the this is what we would call the post-civil rights, anti-civil rights civil war that we were facing and that we were sort of brought into without signing up. We were drafted to serve as the frontline troops in this war. Now, as I started to try to ask myself this question, who am I? Who the heck am I? There's nobody I'm seeing around me that even looks like me, except my brother, and he's trying to figure out the same thing too. My family, my mother and father, they're trying to figure out how to navigate this human geography. Because that's what it is. If you think about us as being planets or stars in the universe, we're not just geographically situated on this earth. We are sort of like a in a whole universe of possibilities in terms of figuring out who it is that we are. Now this next slide is me and Pumpy, my cat. And I was around 10 years old at that time. And when I think about the people or what has formed me, it's not just human beings. It's not all of the people who have been in my life that have formed me. It's also pets and animals. And cats in particular. And you know what I've learned from cats? The whole thing about 9 lives is that they too have many different kinds of lives and many selves. And so that's the kind of thing in terms of a metaphor of thinking about ourselves, that we have many different aspects of ourselves and many lives in one life. Not just one life, but many lives, just like there are many me's. Now, when I was your age, and I was in high school, I went to Jesuit High School in Jersey City, New Jersey, the top school in the state. I played football, I played basketball, and this is me. That's me, with bangs. That's right, with bangs. Now, at the blackboard. Now, one thing, I know it's kind of funny for me to think about that too, but it is another life that I live. That's another person, that's another me. That me is still within me, but that bang-wearing brother back then who was a biracial, one of the few that there were, period, in the city that I lived and grew up in, learned early on that for me to be able to make my mark in the world, in a world where people were not allowing me to equally fit in along with them, I wasn't even allowed to consider myself their peer because of the racial dynamics. The only option to me, at least in my thinking, was if you can't join them, outdo them. And so I learned early on to everything that I did to excel at such a level that I would always be at the top and always looked at who are the top people doing whatever it is that I'm interested in doing, and that's my peer group. Because I'm going to do everything I can to compete with them and be the best I can in terms of looking at what it is they're doing, whether it's academics, whether it's sports, whether it's humor, whether it's drama, whatever it is. It didn't make no difference to me. By the time I was 17 years old, I had already translated the Odyssey from ancient Greek. That's the kind of school I went to. 4 years of Latin, 3 years of ancient Greek. And it took us 2.5 years every day working on translating the Odyssey. And then we did Plato's works in ancient Greek, in the original. Now you can think of the kind of education that is and the kind of people that I was surrounded with. It was an all-boys Jesuit school. And you really had to perform. Now, that allowed me to go to Cornell, to college, and then to MIT to graduate school, and get a couple of advanced degrees. So my vision of myself, having a vision, seeing yourself as being a top competitor and not settling for less, taking the hits, because it is painful growing up. I don't care what you got to handle and what you got to deal with. Yeah, I had to deal with my stuff too. You got to deal with yours. But that's who it is that we are. We get through it. We make it through somehow. And we make it through on the other side as we grow. Now, you see this handsome guy up there at 17 years old, and you probably say he probably was a model too, huh? And you would be right. You would be right. Absolutely right. Another one of my many lives. And I did that. I was modeling This is after I got out of graduate school. I was modeling at the same time. I was a corporate executive in commercial real estate development and finance in Los Angeles. And this is me as a young father and executive with my son at the piano. Another me. That's pretty good. Now, music is a big part of my life. I'm gonna play something for you a little later. But I'm gonna move on a little bit. If I can get the next slide, please. Look familiar? That's me on the mic with dreadlocks, because at a certain point I left and retired from working in the private sector and started doing other things in terms of experimenting with all kinds of dramatic activities. I was one of the top spoken word artists in Los Angeles and then later on in Oakland. And I'm also an advisor here to our Poetry Slam team, and you're going to have the opportunity. You already heard Caleb is one of our great poets, but now you're going to hear some other of our wonderful poets come up here a little bit too. And you're going to give them big props because they be taking it down, man. So that's another part of what I've done in my life. Now, next slide, please. I'm also a symphony conductor. And part of being a musician and being an artist, because that's another part of, I'm an intellectual, I'm an artist, I'm a performer. These are not contradictory things. I'm a corporate executive, I'm an intellectual from great schools, etc. I was a political activist. I'm still a social justice activist. And a teacher. That's me in Oakland, teaching. U.S. history. And being a teacher, after all of the other things I've done in life, and part of why it is that I'm doing this work, a big part of it, is to somehow be the person that I wished had been in my life when I was your age. Somebody who could be there for you as I try to be for my students as many ways as I possibly can, to help them do the best they can, not just in my class, but in all of their classes. Because I want these students to be able to walk out of here with the highest GPA they possibly can and get into the best schools they can. And my students know that, because I love them. And I love being a teacher. It's a hard work, believe me. It's not easy being a teacher. And it's not being easy trying to, with all of the distractions that students have nowadays with cell phones and games and all the rest of the stuff, to be able to have people rise to the occasion of the true potential of their intelligence and what their brains can actually do. It's hard, man. And that's something that all of us got to work together to sort of pull that back in, because if we're talking about who do you think you are, you may just as well be a product of a social network, because all you're doing is, in fact, just interacting with other people in extraordinarily superficial ways, but getting very quick and easy affirmations and likes and all the rest of the other stuff. And so that you see yourself through their eyes and through their likes, dislikes, affirmations, rejections, which makes it even more confusing in terms of figuring out who you are. Now, if I can, wait, hold off the next slide, please. I'm going to do a little piece for you, because it has to do with something that I wrote as a vision, a grand vision of who it is that I would like to be and see myself as, even in my future. And that piece is called The Wild Man. Are you ready? I woke up this morning with the wild man in my belly. begging to break out. Begging to break out of me like a slave is chains. Begging for a cold shower, a hot shower, anything. So as long as it's a shock to that piece of milquetoast mind that's afraid of the moon, that's afraid of the full moon which beckons my wildness to come slay a good night's sleep and come walk the beach and watch the moonbeams dance on waves. And glisten the starlit sky and shiny tides that ripple and jiggle and giggle along the earth's edge, snuggling the sand in wavelets, rivulets, fuguettes, and canonic jigs that roar with laughter for no reason at all. I want to give birth to the ocean and the sea and soar with the pelican and dive in snout first for some fresh fish. And I want to hop on my bike and ride till my head falls off and words no longer matter. And I want to let my dreadlocks explode out of my mind like power lines, antennas that pick up signals from the unknown, genetic codes that double helix backwards and forwards through the spirals of creation. And I just sometimes want to cry for a beautiful sunset, or a school of dolphins swimming by, or for a beautiful piece of music, sitting quietly, reverently, grateful for the breath of life that flows through me, for my childhood, for my mother and father, for my brother and son, for my niece and my nephew, and for all of my relations, including the kitty cats and the birds, the butterflies and the bumblebees, the flowers and the trees. And for all of the great teachers in my life, including and especially my mother, who sits at the right hand of the yellow Formica kitchen table sipping red wine with the Lord and sharing the greatest stories ever told. And I pray to release myself into a future with a woman who knows how to receive me, who knows how to jump into the abyss, shake the dirt from her wings, and fly through the storms, and wake up with her in a future looking back at what we had in the nights before, because they were good and wonderful and full of love. And I also give thanks, and I'm grateful for all of the joys, all of the pains, all of the sorrows, even the regrets. And I release my past wounds. I release all of the guilt, all of the shame, all of the worry, all of the doubts, all of the fear, all of the loneliness, all of the pettiness, all of the prejudice. And I want to say, waterfall, canyon, breeze, reindeer, rainbow, sunshine, and let the forest flow up through my toes, up my legs, and caress my body in the cradle of its sweet womb. And I want to break out of the mountain like lava and fill the valley with the life force welling up within me and meet God face to face. Shake his hand and tell him that I want to be just like him when I grow up. And finally, I just want to live in the moment and just be. Not like some wannabe, but like me, because that's who I truly am. Thank you. Now, for your listening pleasure, I will play the piano because that's a big part of me, and music as well, and then I will...
You want me to?
Are you ready? Ready. Only but really, I'm pretty sure you heard this before, but not this one. Yeah, fine.